As Lisa mentioned, my name is Chloe Lawrence and I work on invasive species for Tees Rivers Trust. Really great to be here talking about our work. So thank you very much to Lucy and everybody else at the Secretariat. Really excited. So we'll get stuck in just a little bit of what we're up to. This is kind of roughly what I'm going to run through today, a little bit about who we are and what we do as a Rivers Trust. I'm going to talk a bit about our regional collaboration with the groups. Oh, someone said they can't see the presentation. Can you see it okay?
It's showing for me. I'll just check. Yeah, it says it's showing for other people.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll chat to that one in the box, Chloe. You can carry on.
No worries. So yeah, we'll just talk a little bit about who we are as Rivers Trust, kind of the work we do as our regional group, the importance we have of catchment scale management, and then I'll probably go into a little bit of information about the individual invasive species that we manage, and then talk about our new invasive species project, which is a Heritage Lottery funded project, which is quite exciting, which we're currently in the development phase for. So that's really kind of the overview of what I'll be talking about today. And yeah, hopefully if you have any questions, we can sort them at the end. So a little bit about Tees Rivers Trust and who we are. So we're based in the northeast of England, working on the River Tees, but also all of the tributaries that come off that. So beck streams, any kind of water that comes off of the Tees really. So the main ones are the Skern, the Leven and the Greeter are the main rivers that come off, but we have a lot of becks and things like that. So we work from source to sea. So up in the North Pennines, there's metal mine remediation work going on. And then all the way to the bottom, we also have estuary restoration work. So there's oyster and seagrass introduction there, and they're currently trialing doing some like kind of mussel restoration because they're also in decline. And then everything else in between, so all the way from the top to the bottom. Last year, we purchased a farm as part of the Natural England Nutrient Neutrality Mitigation Scheme, essentially to try and bring in some money that's rather than spending money on funding all the time, so that we can carry on with conservation works, that especially things that need kind of a bit more contingency, like invasive species management. So kind of where we're at is obviously invasive species is what we're going to talk about today, but we do lots of other things as well. So farm advice, fisheries management, habitat restoration, education, and a lot more. But of course, the star of the show is invasive species management. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk about mainly today. So just kind of starting off is we basically want to work as collaboratively as possible with not only the community, but also with other groups who are doing similar work, any stakeholders, local authorities, anybody who's interested in invasive species management. So what's really important for us is to work as a region. So we are part of the Northeast Invasive Species Group, which is partnered with Tyne Rivers Trust, Weir Rivers Trust, Tweed Forum, Northumbrian Rivers Trust, and then our local record centre, which is Erith Northeast and Newcastle University. We have a regional strategy which came to an end last year, so it was 2020 to 2024, and we're currently spending this year to update that and kind of focusing on what's important, not only for each of us as a catchment, but what we can do as a regional group. So the main focus at the moment is actually early warning. So part of the themes today are kind of covering record keeping and volunteer work. And record keeping is really important for this because essentially any records that go through to Eric can then get distributed to us as Rivers Trust to be able to manage things. So what's important for us in terms of working in as a Northeast region is that some of the species that are maybe really, really densely populated down in the southern part of the country. So, for example, the water primrose, we don't have that here. So working as a region, we can kind of protect what we do has a knock-on effect with the wider partnership. So as I mentioned, we've got the new strategy, which is in development at the moment, but we also hold regional workshops with wider stakeholders like local authorities to support with management and also for ID. So an example of this is a couple of years ago, it was known that floating pennywort, the highest point in the UK, was in the Tees Catchment. We organised an event where a lot of people came volunteer-wise, but also with Paddle UK and the Angling Trust to come and basically manage the site. But it also was great for ID. And then lo and behold, in the Tyne catchment, or I think it may be in Northumberland, they found floating pennywort in its smaller form. So you can then get rid of it in a catchment rather than kind of letting it kind of go along. So it's been really useful. So we're currently working on funding for kind of a bit more rapid response within the Northeast, so that any reports that come through with something that maybe we don't have in the region, that we can tackle it quite quickly, even though it might be an issue somewhere else in the UK. You know, we can still kind of protect it from going up and up into Scotland and things like that. So that's the importance, I suppose, of regional collaboration that we have there. Um, Catchment scale management is kind of what I'm going to talk about next, as obviously we work as a Tees River catchment. So it's not just important just for the region. Obviously, any invasive species work that goes on is important. It doesn't matter if it's a small site, big site, anything. But in terms of when you can work across a catchment scale, the highest priority for us is working from the top, especially on a river, the top of the river, and working downwards, and it maximizes efficiency and resources, and also it's the best way for eradication. You don't want to start at the bottom and then have all of the seeds, mainly talking about plants here, coming downstream. So that's how we are working and how we want to kind of progress further into our new project, is to make sure that we're targeting those highest points and slowly working way downstream, not ignoring management, but I suppose prioritizing those areas so that we can manage them more efficiently. We also have a collaboration with our environment agency, like locally, where we manage the assets on their land. Essentially, they were paying some contractors to do the work, only to find that we were already doing it. So again, it's just about using those resources and working in partnership where we can, and kind of continuing that work and trying to get funding for ongoing invasive species work, so that whatever work you do doesn't go to waste. And a lot of that also comes with community action. So we do have a lot of volunteers, and these aren't necessarily just volunteers that come out on days with us. They might just be people who report while they're out. So, for example, anglers who are really keen on making the river safer for them fishing activities. So we work with a lot of angling clubs throughout the catchment area. And a lot of them now are at a point where they take ownership of their own stretches of land. So we'll provide training and resources and PPE, and they then look after the stretches that they fish on, which has been really beneficial for us, but it's also really beneficial for them. So the collaboration has been really, really important for that. And it means that our resources can be used on other sites, maybe where there isn't an angling club, or maybe the access isn't great. So that's always good. And invasive species management kind of feeds throughout all of our projects. So I've got a picture on the screen of oysters, which come over from Lindisfarne as they're getting reintroduced into the Tees catchment. And it's really important that we don't spread anything from there over here. I suppose that's where check, clean, dry comes into it, and just making sure that we're as biosecure as we can be when you're introducing, you know, even as a native species, but to a catchment area, that, you know, you don't want any, not even just plants, but, you know, any other parasites or anything like that that might be on them. So yeah, we try and incorporate biosecurity or invasive species into all of our projects, because there's elements of it that run the whole way through. So yeah, I suppose that's the overview of catchment scale management. I'm going to talk a little bit about the individual species that we manage. Obviously, there are a lot of invasive species out there and new ones coming all the time. And each catchment area or each part of the country will have different priorities. And you have to kind of choose which ones you're gonna work on. You can't do them all, unfortunately. So there's four main invasive species that we work on at the moment, which are Himalayan balsam, Japanese knotweed, giant hogweed, and then soon to be a little bit more of the floating penny works. So starting with Himalayan balsam, we've had a few different pots of funding from the Green Recovery Challenge Fund and the Northumbrian Water Branch Out Fund to do biological control works. So we have been the northern contractors for Cabby when they were first releasing the rust fungus, which is essentially a species that naturally lives on balsam out in the Himalayas, essentially. And it's a natural predator which has been tested in labs before it's been allowed to be produced here. So it does live its life on the balsam. This is not an eradication technique, essentially. It's a way of reducing stand density and seed production to allow native species to grow. It's a bit more of a sustainable solution for long-term management as opposed to hand pulling or things like that. So um, I think it's important for us specifically is that we don't just prioritize one type of management, that we try lots of different techniques and see what works best at some sites. As balsam's been introduced multiple times, there are different strains, and some of the sites that we have aren't susceptible to either strain that they currently have. So those are the type of sites that we do hand pulling. There's been some really cool projects on scything. So that's something we'd like to try in our new project, which I'll come to shortly. But also getting younger generations involved in engagement and education. So one of my colleagues has started a Wild Tees Tribe Club, which is basically a kids club for a Sunday once a month where they go out and do various activities and get kind of the younger generation involved. And invasive species can be quite tough to do because obviously um, things like giant hogweed, which we do have a lot of, you can't really get children to manage those. So having something like balsam, which can be quite fun to manage, is a great way basically for to get younger people involved, and learning about invasive species is a good gateway to the future, I suppose, of people learning more about the environment. So yeah, we've got a few different ways of managing. We have 13 biocontrol sites that seem to be doing really well. We do have a few handbooks on our website if anybody's interested in the process of what basically we've done and what lessons we've learned. And we're hoping to expand this work, which I will come to shortly. The next plant that we deal with is Japanese knotweed. A lot of this is predominantly herbicide spraying and stem injection. We don't have a lot of Japanese knotweed on the tees. There are clumps of it around, but it's not inundated everywhere. We tend to manage that around the giant hogweed sites that we also have. But we have trialed biocontrol here as well for which is psyllids, which you can see in the third picture along a little tiny insect, which is a sap-sucking insect, which is supposed to reduce density. Unfortunately, we've not had the most success with this. They're not doing too well at overwintering. It's a bit cold here for them. I know Cabby is still doing some work to make them a little bit more resilient. But I think they have a preference to a different type of knotweed, which we don't have in our catchment area. So at the moment, herbicide spraying and stem injection is probably likely the way forwards for us, unless there's a potential for a different type of biocontrol or other methods that kind of come forwards with that. Floating pennywort, as I mentioned, that's quite a new plant that we're working on. We've got a couple of sites, which are one in Stockton Borough Council site, and the other one is a Tees Valley Wildlife Trust site, which is at Marshland, which is a triple SI area. We don't want to rely on just chemical all the time. Obviously, a lot of them being in watercourses, it's not ideal. So hand pulling ideally would be great. And we've also got plans in our new project with to try the biocontrol weevil, which we've never done before. So we'll have a couple of sites of that, which will be really interesting, and hopefully create a couple of more resources like the handbooks that have been created for the balsam and the knotweed, so that other people can see what kind of experience it is. The issue we have in terms of the floating pennywort sites is compared to sites that are really dense down south, which are on like a lot of canals and open waterways. I know Angle Interest and Paddle UK work really collaboratively on managing it. Our sites aren't particularly well accessible. You can't see massively in the photo in the middle, but the site that this floating pennywort's on is really, really silty pond. So actually getting in there is not great. It could be quite dangerous. and it's not particularly accessible in terms of it's in the middle of a woodland in terms of getting a boat down there or a kayak. So it's not necessarily ideal. We're still working out the teething issues, but being able to work with other organisations that have got a lot of experience in managing float and penny works is going to be really useful for us long term, because we're still kind of in the early stages at the moment of management. So yeah, hopefully things will progress a little bit more. And then I've kind of saved the best till last, I should say. We work a lot on giant hogweed. We've previously had a top hog project, which ran from 2018 to 2023. It finished in January of that year, the following year, the 2024. But essentially, we've been working on giant hogweed since 2012. And even though COVID was a little bit of a difficult time in terms of management, just because of furlough and not being able to go out and spray, not seen as essential work, like basically, we've still managed to make some really, really good progress. So I'll just read out a couple of the statistics that we've had from that project. So the treatment of giant hogweed from 2018 to 2023 was over 899 kilometres of riverside, or double the length of Pennine Way, so quite a considerable amount of riverbank covered. The reduction in giant hogweed concentrations by 85%. That was at 6 selected sites which were chosen prior to the project starting. So even though that's not across the whole catchment, that's still a good benefit that we've had of seeds not being formed there, and obviously ongoing management. And then 64,000 native plants and bulbs, 350 native trees planted to improve biodiversity. So even though you get a few spanners in the works, it's been really, really beneficial, that project, and it's kind of been used as a way that we want to expand that work into our new project, which I will come on to. But just before I do, I just want to talk a little bit about how we don't want to just focus on chemical spraying. It's something we're obviously aware of working near rivers. We want to try other methods as well, just so that you don't just rely on one thing. So a few years ago, we went to Estonia. We met some really great people from the environmental board out there and had a look at some of the things that they were doing. And one method they were trialing was geotextile mesh, essentially to put down to prevent giant hogweed from growing. And so we decided we were going to trial it here. So this site here is based not far from Darlington, and basically there's a really, really heavy seed bank there, and it didn't matter how much you would spray time and time again, you would still have to go back there, and it would still be flowering. So we decided to trial the geotextile at this site. I don't know if you can see in the pictures, but basically there's loads of giant hogweed stems there. I do have more pictures if anybody wants to see kind of the progress, and we have like a blog update on it as well. So we moved all of the stems in the January and laid the geotextile down. We've put it with some lovely pretty rocks and trees, rocks and stems and branches and things like that, to try and keep it down, because it's on a riverbank that's a bit it catches the wind quite a lot. So essentially, it's just to keep it down as long as well as the pegs that we have in. But it's actually doing really well. So it's been down for about 18 months now. There's no giant hogweed that's grown through. We go back and check it quite regularly. The plan for this site will be to leave it down for a few years to kind of reduce the viability in the seeds that are in the soil, and then probably remove about a quarter of it and see what happens. If the giant hogweed still continues to grow through, we'll just place it back down again. But if not, we will likely leave it open, or remove a little bit more, and start planting native plants there. And that's the hope for it. And then we can reuse the geotextile elsewhere. So yeah, quite happy with how it's going at the moment. And yeah, we'll just have to see. Obviously, this isn't an option for everywhere, because not all of the riverbanks are like this, but it's nice to try something a little bit different than just using chemical, especially considering the chemical wasn't actually being very effective in terms of stopping other seeds coming through. I don't know if I can play a video on here. I'm hoping I can, but Another method is sheep, which we've had at a site near to this. And basically, sheep will eat giant hogweed when it's quite small. So some of the sites we're hoping to look at in the future will be fencing in and having some sheep on and moving those around because they just really like it, but only when it's small. So we'll have to manage it to a certain extent, and then hopefully it'll do quite well. But we do have one site which is not far from the geotextile where the landowner now keeps sheep on it, and there's no giant hogweed that comes back. So yeah, really beneficial to just try different things. And then lastly, I just got a little bit of a case study. There's a link to a story map here for anybody who wants to have a look. But basically, this is a site called Roundhill, which is towards Stockton area. This is my colleague James, who has stood basically in a really, really dense field of it. And again, COVID probably didn't help for this, but we ran a smaller trial on removing, well, basically ploughing the giant hogweed so that the seeds get pushed under. There's about 15 centimeters underneath the soil, they won't grow. So ploughing it first and then rotating it with wildflower seeds. So we decided to trial it at this site, and it has been really effective. We started with a 100-meter quadrat. I think it was like 100 meters by 20, and it was really, really effective. So we decided to move it to a larger scale on 2 fields. This was done a couple of years ago now, and this was September last year. There are a few hogweed seeds that come through either on the track lines, or you can see there's like surrounding woodland. So they do still still have odd bits, but we do, compared to what it was like, it's a huge improvement. So yeah, really happy with how that's going. And just in terms of what it looks like at the site, all of these white bits that you can see in 2017, that's all the flowering giant hogweed. The site's a lot bigger. I haven't got all of it in, but these are the main 2 fields. And then you can see the photo on the right hand side, which was last year, just a Google screenshot of what it's like now. So yeah, we've got some real progress. And again, it's just nice to just not have to use chemical for everything and to try different sites. Again, it's not always suitable. This site was pretty good in terms of being able to get a tractor through and access, but obviously I appreciate not every site is like that, but it's nice to see how we do with it. Um, a little bit just on the end of that Top Hog project, we engaged with over 2,000 people through education activities. We had like a lot of schools out teaching them about invasive species and rivers, and which was really great. In terms of volunteering, which obviously I appreciate is really valuable on the themes today, we've had over that period 2,055 volunteer days, or the equivalent of 10 full-time staff for a year from over 65 volunteers, which is just absolutely incredible. And you couldn't do the work we do without volunteers. So yeah, really vital. I think a few of the volunteers I shared this video with, so hopefully they're out and about. But really, really important for us. And we've also had a new starter within this project, which I'll go into a little bit. Who will be overseeing our volunteer activities and just kind of growing that, which is really exciting. 70 education days delivered with over 15 schools. A lot of the schools we deal with are in really deprived areas, so it's their favourite school trip. A lot of them love falling in the river. And yeah, it's been really good to just speak to a lot of different people about invasive species and raise awareness for it, for the work we do, and how important it is to spend time out on the river. And yeah, we had 62 volunteers trained in herbicide use as well. So when I mentioned about a lot of angling clubs who would take ownership of their own land, that's not just angling clubs. A lot of volunteers are happy to do it. Landowners, there's a really big sense of community value in the work that we're doing. So really, really useful and great to see. So kind of where are we at now? I've obviously mentioned the Northeast Regional Strategy and Partnership. We've got continued invasive species efforts with the Environment Agency under our collaborative agreement with them. Mentioned about the landowner, the land purchase that we've had, and kind of looking for alternative funding. So we're not just relying on chasing funding all the time, but have a steady flow so that we can continue the work that we do. A lot of community-led action, and since that Top Hog project, a lot of people who are really keen on now getting involved. Maybe they'd seen from another angling club of what had been done, and then now they're like, oh, I really want to do that on my stretch, which is really good to see. We're currently in the development phase of the Tees Invasive Species Project, which is National Lottery Heritage Fund project, with a bit of funding from Northumbrian Water as well. So that's kind of what I'm going to spend the rest of this time talking about. It's a really exciting project, and yeah, really keen to see what people think, and any input that anybody wants to put in is always great. So a little bit about the project. The development phase has started in February this year and it will run till February next year. And then the delivery phase will run from next year through to 2031. So a nice, lovely 6-year stint. It will involve 5 team members, so project manager, volunteer coordinator, a couple of project officers, and 1 education officer. At the moment, it's me, and as I mentioned, we've got a new starter, Kennedy, who's our new volunteer coordinator. So we've got a couple of people, but already have to have a few more team members involved to really kind of see what we can do. And basically, we want to protect and restore the natural heritage of the Tees Catchment. Really important for us to manage invasive species, but also engage with community about the environment and try and get as many people involved and educate as many people as we can about volunteering and building kind of long-term sustainability through training and habitat restoration and yeah, basically growing what we can out of this project. So yeah, really exciting. It's a £2.7 million project, so it's definitely well worth hopefully what we're going to get out of it. And I'll just talk a little bit about kind of what we want out of the project essentially. So first off, mapping and monitoring and recording is really, really important for us, as I mentioned, in terms of the rapid response from the regional point of view, but also so that we can make sure that we're really getting as best management and best efficiency and best resources as we can. So anything that's recorded through iRecord goes to our local record centre, which then comes back to us. So we're currently trialling our like kind of rapid response at the moment. Anything through INNS Mapper is really good, so because we can also survey and we can also have a look at any new reports that have come through or maybe areas that we're not really too sure of. It's really, really useful for us. So if you do, go walking along the river or if you go walk your dog or anything and you think, oh, I don't know what to do with this time, any reporting is really, really valuable for us. And it's great to get stuck in because you feel like you're being part of like a wider initiative. We also have Andrew, who's down on the left-hand side, who has a drone flight company. We're really keen on mapping using the drone, which we have done before, but a bit of a larger scale, but also trialing use of chemical for drone spraying because some of the areas that we have are really, really difficult to access. They're not suitable for volunteers or just people in general, and we don't want anybody's safety to come at risk. So yeah, definitely would like to give that a try during this new project, which is quite exciting because I don't think, especially in this country, that invasive species like drone usage has been used before. So it's all very new and exciting to try that. So make sure you map and monitor where you can. Obviously, volunteers and community engagement. We really want to have another push for engaging with schools in their local area and raising more awareness about check, clean and dry and other biosecurity practices, get some more signage up for areas, especially where people maybe paddle or use the river for fishing or anything like that. And we have a really, really great core volunteer group, but it's also important to kind of engage with new people as well, which is hopefully what our new starter will be doing, and seeing if there's other ways that people can volunteer that's not necessarily just practical. I think sometimes when you work for an environmental organisation, you think it all has to be physical work when it doesn't, that mapping and monitoring can be virtual or it doesn't have to be particularly labour intensive. So it'd be really good to kind of grow that a little bit more and see what we can do for people who maybe want to get involved but aren't quite sure how or maybe don't have the ability or resources to come out and volunteer with us. So yeah, we want to make sure we're engaging with everybody that we can that wants to get involved in the project. And then, of course, the biggest part of the invasive species project will be the INNS management of it. So, as I've mentioned, we have 13 biocontrol sites for Himalayan balsam. We're hoping to increase this to 25 additional sites. So there'll be 38 altogether, spread throughout the catchment area, which will be really good. So we'll be working with CABI for that. Potentially Japanese knotweed if we can trial it again, depending on the psyllid. We don't want to just trial it for the sake of it, but if it can work, we really want to get involved in that again. And then having a couple of floating pennyworth sites as well. So we'll be working with our local authorities and also other like Tees Valley Wildlife Trust as well, to trial some of those sites, which will be really good. And then this will be kind of alongside the physical management of invasive species, so chemical treatment, manual pulling, and then maybe trialing a few more non-conventional methods, a bit like the geotextile or the ploughing and rotivating, and just seeing kind of what works and maybe what doesn't for us, because everybody's different, every catchment area is different. So it would be good to trial some things that maybe are a little bit non-conventional, but still might work quite well. And then the development of the Northeast Rapid Response Early Warning, which, as I say, we're kind of trialing this within the development phase anyway. But, how can we grow this and, support other rivers trusts within the catchment, because that's going to have a knock-on effect on the work that we do. So yeah, INNS management, a big one of that. So yeah, just obviously a quick thank you to our funders, predominantly the Heritage Fund, but also the Environment Agency, the Branch Out funds. We also get a donation from one of the local parish councils, and essentially anybody who's put in and really does support the work, because we can really see the difference we've made in previous projects, and it'll be amazing to see what we can do with our new project. And yeah, really excited to share that, I suppose. And I know it's not quite an hour long, but that's it from me. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to kind of follow along and see how we get on.
Thank you, Chloe. That was a great talk, and it's really are brilliant projects. That the figure you had for your sort of equivalent, well, your volunteer hours is incredible, really. So yeah, very good to hear about all of the work, and I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to hearing more about the projects and as it progresses. Oh, you also mentioned some of that resources you have, including the handbooks, which are really good. I definitely recommend people go to your website and have a look at those.
Yeah, I think a couple of them Ben's put on the non-native secretariat page as well, so they are around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're in the lag toolkit. So yeah, definitely check those out. We do have some time for questions, so if there's anything that you would like to ask Chloe, please put them in the chat box. While we wait and see those, I was just going to ask you about the sheep that you use for giant hogweed. Is there a point at which they can't handle the hogweed? Does it matter the kind of
Um,
size?
Not so much the size. It's actually to do with the colouring of. So if black nose sheep do a lot better, we have had a couple of landowners who've had like sheep with a bit more like pale faces, and they do start to get blisters in their mouths if you're not careful. But in terms of like whether they have or not of it, apparently they just really like it. It's quite sweet for them. So I don't think in terms of maybe the volume or like size of the sheep, but maybe more so the colour of their noses will determine whether they actually get blisters or not from it. So yeah, in moderation, I suppose.
No, it's great. It's really good to use kind of natural solution. Um, just to give everyone a minute more for questions. I think because you've given such a good talk, you've left no kind of room for questions. Ah, a
Oh,
comment.
nice.
So one from someone saying that they've been using sheep against giant hogweed in Scotland as well. Yes, I think that's Nature Scott.
Oh, super. I have seen as well, we did a post last year on Himalayan balsam, and a lot of engagement from it came from people who said horses eat balsam and donkeys as well, which I've never come across before. But yeah, that's always something. Maybe I don't know how you would trial that, but it's worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting to hear about all these different techniques. Okay, all very quiet. So I think if anyone does have any kind of burning questions afterwards, then here we go, actually. So where do you think we will be with giant hogweed around the Tees in 19 years' time?
Oh,
Or a
okay.
specific figure?
That is specific. Well, I'd like to think that at least the first 10 kilometers of the Tees where we have reports from the highest point of giant hogweed will be eradicated. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see a reduction, maybe like 70 or 80% in the rest of the catchment area. But more so just to have that sustainability of people who are still really interested in engaging in the work. And even if that means that, there's still odd few plants here and there, but there's people who are keen on kind of reporting them or mapping them out, and then we can respond to them quite quickly, then I'd be pretty happy with that. I think genuinely we have quite a few all the questions coming through. Yeah, I think in terms of for this project specifically, it would be really good to see like quite a large reduction in giant hogweed. And we've got a lot of resources that we want to continue to use. So we have a quad bike, which is really beneficial. It holds a big tank, so even if the volunteers, it saves them going up and down to the river to fill up the knapsacks, and that's always really good. But also we have a boat, so being able to spray from the boat and just kind of utilizing whatever resources we have to just reduce it, so that at least in areas where they're really publicly accessible, that the hogweed is not as much a risk to people.
Yeah, well, that all sounds good. There's one comment here, which will probably be very relevant. So Northumbrian Water have a invasive species officer starting in post in June. I'm sure that'll be
Oh, super.
someone who'd be very relevant to your work.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
there's one question which I think is in progress, so I'll let them finish typing that out. Someone else pointing out a full case study of the sheep grazing trial on the CC website. So that's the Scottish Invasive Species Initiative, so people can go and check that out as well. And yeah, someone saying that interesting point on the nose colour of the sheep. They had a lamb which had a photosensitive reaction to something, they're not sure what. And the vet said that white-faced sheep were more susceptible. So definitely matches up with what you were saying.
Yeah, so I don't know how true it is. I haven't got statistics for it, but apparently, even though common hogweed won't produce blisters, if you've got quite sensitive skin, if you're quite like say you're really fair skinned, like common hogweed can cause like itchiness or like a reaction. So I wonder if maybe that potentially could have been it, but.
Yeah. Just see if this person's gonna finish the end of their question. I think it was around Himalayan balsam and the rust fungus. Give them another minute. Yeah, it doesn't look like they are. So I think, yeah, if anyone does have any kind of, yeah, questions that they would like Chloe to answer, I can put, well, actually, Chloe's contact details are in the on the slide on the screen at the moment, so people can contact you if they have any more. But yeah, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Chloe for joining us, giving up your time to do this. It really is a great project. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing much more as it progresses. It sounds like you're going to be very busy. Well, continue to be very busy for the next few years, which is good.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me as well. Really, really nice to share the work. And I'm glad so many people are interested.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so thank you, Chloe, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.